They're all in line. Setono Carnival restless. And now breaking through the gate here is Aomori City. A bit of a delay here. Number 12, Aomori City, has broken through the starting gate and will have to be brought back behind the gate here. So we are going to have a bit of a delay here in the start of the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Turf. Aomori City is back behind the starting gate now. And he's about to move back into line. Once again, they're all in line, ready for the start. They're off in the juvenile turf, and there goes Zulu Kingdom right out for the early lead. And then it's Dream On away running in second. Mentee goes up on the outside. And then it's Setono Carnival and Iron Man Cal. And right behind them is Seagulls 11 as they make their way into that turn. Noble Confessor saves ground inside of Al Qudra. New Century 3 wide into that turn. And then the Waco Kid and Henri Matisse. And last of them all is Aomori City, who is 10 lengths behind the front runner. And that front runner is Dream On, who went 22.65 for the opening quarter mile and leads up the backstretch by 3/4 of a length. Mentee on the outside of a hard-held Zulu Kingdom, second and third Setono Carnival, fourth down toward the inside. Outside of them, Seagulls 11, then Iron Man Cal, New Century, Noble Confessor down toward the inside, and Al Qudra. Henri Matisse is 9 lengths behind, then the Waco Kid and Aomori City. 46.31 was the half mile, racing for the far turn. Dream On is the leader here. On top a length and a half, Seagulls 11 has moved up on the outside. Zulu Kingdom is in behind horses. That's all for Mentee. Setono Carnival is next. And then comes Iron Man Cal and New Century. And they're into the stretch, and Dream On is the one to catch. Dream On, another furlong to run. Zulu Kingdom, Iron Man Cal streaks up on the outside, and Henri Matisse is coming too. The driving finish, here's Henri Matisse to take the lead, and Henri Matisse wins from Iron Man Cal. Aomori City came charging late for third, and then came New Century.
Aidan O'Brien with another one, his 7th victory in this race. Henri Matisse for he and Ryan Moore. Sensational down the stretch.
A stunning performance from Henri Matisse, bouncing back from a disappointing run at Longchamp last time out. Aidan O'Brien said earlier in the week, I made a mistake by putting headgear on him when he ran at Longchamp. I've decided that he doesn't need it. We'll go back to basics with him. And he's produced a telling turn of foot in a race run at a great pace that allowed the closers. 1 or 2 hard luck stories in behind. James Doyle nearly actually came off Al Qudra in the closing stages where he got shut in between Seagulls 11 and another horse. But real drama in our closing race.
Can we talk about Iron Man Cal? He at 25-1 almost wins the darn thing. He won the Zuma Beach by virtue of DQ. I know that Little Red Feather and Phil D'Amato were very high on this colt's chances, and he was doing sensationally well all week long. Boy, and he just gets beat by one of the best juveniles in the world. Let's take an ISO look here, and this is where Henri Matisse settles on the backstretch.
Yeah, and he's towards the back of the pack, which is where you wanted to be in this race because of the fast pace that ensued in front of him. Now, this is not necessarily a perfect trip, though, because this horse is out in the clear, wide. That's not really the type of trip that you want in a 2-turn turf race, but I think it just proved how good he was. And really, Ryan, at this point, Ryan Moore didn't have to do much because he could stay out in the clear and kick on, whereas the 12, Amore City, he kind of had to navigate a little bit more today.
Rishi, you talked about some of that trouble in the stretch. We do have a Stewards inquiry in this race. They've hung the inquiry sign, and the Stewards are controlling the video right now to take a look.
Watch the horse in the white cap, James Doyle in the middle of the field. He's about to make his run between New.A and Seagulls 11, and they close the gap. And watch James Doyle.
Oh!
So the 11 New.A, it seemed like the 7 was tiring, but the 11 New.A does come over a little bit, and I think that's where that happened. El Qudra clipping heels with the 11 New.A.
And I think that the 13, although right next to the action, was clear of it. I don't believe they're going to be hanging the sign next to Henri Matisse, but they still have the photo on the sign on the tote board for win. We have an inquiry. There was an incident in the stretch, and it wasn't far away from where the winner came from.
I think the winner's okay. Look at where he is. I think El Qudra will be cursing New.A. He's been involved in a couple of finishes now where things haven't worked out. But I think it's, from this angle, it's hard to tell, but it looked as if Seagulls 11 drifted out into El Qudra's path, and that's where the trouble was.
I think he was getting tired, and he just kind of lost his path, and he drifted out, and really, you know, New.A was kind of standing his ground, couldn't really go anywhere, and that's where El Qudra just gets into a really bad spot there.
It's interesting, though. We have to see this head on if it was the 7 coming out or the 11 coming in. New.A did float in. The 7, Seagulls 11 appeared to float out. We're not going to know until we see a head on or a drone look. You can see exactly what angle they were taking off of that turn.
It's remarkable that James Doyle actually stayed in the saddle, because I just saw for a moment there his foot came out of the iron, and somehow he, after staying on, did manage to get his foot back in the iron. So now we get this head-on view, Rishi, and we can look at it. It does appear that the 7 comes out and forces him to kind of bump into the 11 New.A.
It didn't look like there was a ton of a lane, like a ton of room there. I mean, right there, he's got the lane. The 11, the
bit of a combination, I'm thinking.
Yeah.
New.A.'s lent on him a little bit. Seagulls 11 has drifted out, but that seems to be the key to it. In the meantime, Henri Matisse and Amore City are making their ground out wide. But this is the interference. James Doyle, poor Al Qudra, has got nowhere to go. And as you pointed out, he's caught his leg.
His leg went so wide. My goodness. I mean, and look at him. James Doyle almost falls off. He loses his right iron and is on the right side of the horse. The fact that he could get himself back on and put his foot back in the iron, that is incredible athleticism.
Let's take a look at this from the drone view, and maybe we can get a little bit better look. And you can see, look for the blue silks and the white cap. That is the horse that Williams on. It's really tough there. I don't know who to blame. It was a little bit of both, wasn't it, Rishi?
I feel it's a combination of both horses just squeezing him up, because it's right off the bend. New.A.'s probably just leaning left a fraction, and Seagulls 11 is drifting to his right a fraction. And James Doyle's only got that gap. That's the only option he can take, and they close it together, and he does really. It does help that the horse kept a straight path, because if the horse had gone either left or right, James Doyle would have had to make an exit.
I think the 11 does come in a little more than the 7 comes out.
The drone footage, you can really see it from here, that the 11 does come in a little bit.
I think the 7 floats out just a hair, but more of that was New.A coming in just a touch. I mean, it's a tough call to try and figure out who is exactly to blame, but there's no doubt William Buick clipping hills, and now we're going to have to see whether or not they make a decision here to take New.A down.
This is an interesting angle as well. It's so hard to tell exactly who's at fault. Incredible. The horses clipped heels. They got tangled up. I'm really hoping all the horses are okay.
I keep saying William Buick. That's Jamie Doyle. My apologies. And that's El Qudra who's involved in that with the white cap. But, I mean, it was just such a scary moment. You get an idea just the athleticism of El Qudra to get back up and stay in stride, and the athleticism of Jamie Doyle to
he had a balance on 3 legs there, because though his left front leg was essentially kind of tangled up in the 7 Seagulls 11. This is an my goodness.
Sheen Murphy sticking the right hand, and he knows what's happening, because you'll see at the moment when James Doyle almost comes down, he's immediately looking back.
I mean, I've never seen a horse's leg go that far into the hind end of another.
Thank
that's
goodness.
Crazy.
That's wild. I mean, that's the play of the day to Al Qudra to stay on his feet. My goodness. He's held his composure in a really tight spot there.
Now, the stewards here in Southern California are going to be diligent and make sure they take all angles. And I don't blame them for taking their time with this, because it is difficult to assign blame.
Decision.
It is. I believe the right call is to take New.A down. I don't know what the right call would be for Seagull's 11. Perhaps you leave Seagull's 11 there. He didn't finish anywhere of consequence.
No.
Now, we haven't really talked about the 2 Dream On, but why is the inquiry sign on him?
I don't know. I don't know.
Here, so Dream On runs into Seagull's 11 after the major incident.
Okay.
So I'm assuming that there was more contact, and that's why that's gone. So after the main incident between Seagull's 11, New.A and Al Qudra, Seagull's 11 then drifts over to his left, our right as we're looking at it, and then he and Dream On come close to each other.
Okay.
Here.
I'm not sure Dream On is in any danger of being disqualified at all. I think it's going to be New.A who comes down, and they're probably deciding what to do with the 7. But they're going to look at this over and over again. We've shown you the pan view. We've shown you the head-on like we're seeing right now. We've also shown you the drone view, which gives you a rather good idea as well. So we shall see exactly what the stewards decide to do. But I don't believe Dream On is in any question here whatsoever.
It is, yeah.
It's still brutal. We must have seen this replay now 10, 11 times. Every time you see it, it's so brutal to watch. It's incredible how Al Qudra stayed on his feet.
A lot of people have a lot of opinions about disqualifications, Mike, and being a steward is one of the hardest jobs because you're under a lot of scrutiny, and I will say that this is probably one of the more difficult decisions here because of the nuances of this unfortunate circumstance.
I would look at this and think, firstly, on a fair and just principle, that New.A hasn't done a great deal wrong, and that Al Qudra is angling for a gap that isn't entirely there due to 2 factors, a little bit of New.A and a little bit of Seagull's 11. So therefore, how can you ascertain all the blame to one or the other?
I'm with you. I think to James Doyle, it probably looks like that hole is bigger than it really is, because at that point it's not there and he's still moving up into it.
Yeah, I agree.
And that could be another factor that's really delaying a decision at this point, because they're trying to figure what to do. I'm not certain I would be able to clearly articulate the rule involved here, because are we talking about a horse that's being cost a better placing when they're running that far out of the money and they're all so close together? We shall see in a matter of moments, though, as they are taking a look at this, as New.A blinking on the tote board with the inquiry sign still up.
I do think that Charlie Appleby will be counting his bad luck in this race, because Amori City burst the stalls beforehand and then had to be held up at the back, and he's flown home. He's a bit unlucky, and I think Al Qudra would have played a big part in the race had he got a clean run. So I think the Appleby Godolphin team very unlucky in this race, but on the flip side, lucky that James Doyle and Al Qudra stayed on their feet and at first glance are okay.
I mean, this is a tremendous athleticism by both horse and rider. And James Doyle very lucky that, one, he managed to stay in the irons. And part of that luck is, two, the athleticism he was naturally born with, because that's just reaction time. I mean, some of this is skills you learn, and some of it is just will have the neurons to react that quickly and the muscular memory to stay aboard when there's a situation like this. It really could be dire if you were to come off.
Rishi, I think you really described this perfectly, because when horses are rounding the bend, after they round the bend and then they're on the straightaway, they're going to subtly change positions. That's just the nature of horses.
Exactly.
I don't think New.A really moved in or out that much. I think he kind of just came out of the turn and then established his position. So what you mentioned, that I don't know that the hole was really there to go through, I kind of think there's truth to that.
So how would this be adjudicated in Great Britain?
Well, they'll look at that and they'll think, has either rider of Seagull's 11 or the horse on the outside, New.A caused, either rider, by how they've delivered their horse into that position, have either rider done anything deliberate or careless? Has that interference affected the outcome of the race. Obviously, it has affected the outcome, but there's no way to ascertain what that outcome of the race would have been. And obviously, in this sort of an instance, I think it's more a case of an accident as opposed to deliberate. So that's how, back in the UK, we would have worked it out.
I think we have a decision coming in right now. Let's listen in.
Ladies and gentlemen, the stewards have ruled that there will be no change to the order of finish. The result will stand 13-6, 12-11-2.
And after all that, I can't blame that for that decision. I think I started out thinking there would be a DQ. I think looking at the hole that maybe didn't materialize for James Doyle, and it was an unfortunate circumstance, but holding it against New Century or perhaps the 7-horse Seagulls 11